Good morning, everyone. Croeso cynnes I bob un ohonoch chi. Braf cael eich cwmni heddi. It's good to be with you here today. We are meeting in person, of course, for day one, travel tomorrow, and then online on Wednesday. Before we commence, I'm delighted that Father John Connell is with us once more, who will open our meeting with prayer. John.
Yn enw Tad y Mab a'r Ysbryd Glân. From St. Paul's Epistle to the Ephesians, chapter 3. I pray that according to the riches of his glory, he may grant that you may be strengthened in your inner being with power through his Spirit, and that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, as you are being rooted and grounded in love. I pray that you may have the power to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge, so that you may be filled with all the goodness of God. As we gather today for this in-person meeting of governing body, let us commend our day with all its deliberations and discussions to the God who created us in love, the God who redeems us with his love, the God who strengthens and renews us in love. May God grant us the discernment to see the groundedness and rootedness of one another in the love of Christ. May we see in our fellow members of governing body the image of the risen Jesus placed in our lives through the grace of baptism. And may we listen to one another and speak to one another with sensitivity, care, love, and respect. May we rejoice that within the rich diversity of humanity, all God's children are fearfully and wonderfully made. May we show love, compassion, and concern for all those who are anxious about today's debate, especially for the members of the LGBTI+ community, both within and without the church. O holy and ever-living God, by your power we are created, and by your love we are redeemed. Guide and strengthen us by your Holy Spirit, that we may give ourselves afresh to your service, and live this day in love to one another and to you, through Jesus Christ, our Saviour. Amen. Anselm of Canterbury, in his famous canticle, calls for the tender love of Jesus to remake us. Let us acknowledge the need of all of us to be fashioned by the love of Jesus. May his love touch all our hearts today, and may we all know ourselves to be rooted and grounded in that love. The response: in your love and tenderness, remake us. In your love and tenderness, remake us. Jesus, like a mother, you gather your people to you. You are gentle with us as a mother with her children. In your love and tenderness, remake us. Often you weep over our sins and our pride, but tenderly you draw us from hatred and judgment. In your love and tenderness, remake us. You comfort us in sorrow and bind up our wounds. In sickness you nurse us, and with pure milk you feed us. In your love and tenderness, remake us. Jesus, by your dying, we are born to new life. By your anguish and labour, we come forth in joy. In your love and tenderness, remake us. Your warmth gives life to the dead. Your touch makes sinners righteous. In your love and tenderness, remake us. In your compassion, bring grace and forgiveness. For the beauty of heaven, may your love prepare us. In your love and tenderness, remake us. Let us pray for the business of this meeting of the governing body, that God's spirit of wisdom and counsel may flow in us and through us, in all we say and all we do in the service of God's church and God's holy people. Let us pray that our hearts will be open, generous, and loving. A prayer from the 5th century. O Lord, you have told us that you will ask much of those to whom much is given. May we who enjoy so rich an inheritance of faith work together the more fruitfully by our prayers and labours, to share with those who do not yet know you the gifts and the love we so plentifully enjoy. And as we have entered into the labours of others, so may others enter into ours. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. And let us acknowledge the world beyond our immediate concerns here today, a world where many suffer through poverty, war, natural disaster, disease, and as a result of our failure to care for our beautiful planet and its precious resources. O Lord of all compassion, we pray for all those caught up in the midst of tragedy or disaster, for those who have lost life and those working to save life, for those who are worried for people they love, for those who will see their loved ones no longer, for those in need of the peace that passes all understanding, for all who turn to you in the midst of their turmoil, for those who cry out to you in fear and love, for those in confusion and those in despair, for those whose tears are yet to dry, for those in need of the touch of your unending love, revealed to us in your Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Finally, let us share a moment of silence and stillness as we pray for one another, as we give thanks for one another, as we pray in particular for those whom we love and respect in this body, and with whom we may be in disagreement in our debate today. And if you know of someone who has a different view on the bill before us this afternoon, hold them on your heart, pray for them, and pray for those who will feel hurt, failure, or disappointment as a result of the vote today, whatever the outcome may be. And we say together the Lord's Prayer in the language of our hearts. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. The Lord be with you. Let us bless the Lord.
John, thank you very much for those prayers and for arranging all the worship which we will share in governing body. It is so appreciated. We turn to the certification of the President's mandate, and I call upon the lay secretary to make the due declaration.
In accordance with Regulation 16.2, in the second chapter of Volume 1 of the Constitution, I hereby certify the due execution of the President's mandate.
Thank you very much. There are some announcements. I do apologise, but we do need to be clear about the nature of our environment and our gathering, so please bear with me. As you know, we're meeting in person today and on Wednesday by video conference. In designing the meeting, the Standing Committee has tried to strike a balance between COVID safety, the effective use of Zoom, together with the need to discuss some of our business in person. Before we turn to safety, however, could I just ask, I'm sure there are people who are here for the first time. There are new members. Could I ask you to be bold and brave and stand so we can see who you are? If you're a new member, please do stand. Well, could I welcome you especially? It's great to have you here. Thank you for being prepared to give your time for this meeting. It is so appreciated. We ask God's blessing on you. Please do take a seat. The obvious matters around COVID. If you begin to experience COVID-19 symptoms during the event, you must inform us and you must, of course, leave. To be considerate to those around you and respectful of all the measures put in place, please do try to maintain some kind of respectful distance in conversation. The ICC Wales has produced a reopening guide, COVID-19 venue risk assessment, which is with you in the meeting papers. Please do have a look at that. And the provincial staff have also produced a comprehensive risk assessment, which deals with mitigation or elimination of COVID risk. Some members of staff have asked to monitor compliance with these precautions, and they will gently and politely intervene if they do see any inadvertent breaches. For the time being, the Welsh Government designates the use of face coverings as mandatory in indoor public spaces unless an individual is exempt. And stating the obvious, when you come to speak at the microphones, you ought to take your mask off so that we can hear you. Please do, however, wear a mask covering in the meeting unless there are good reasons why you should not. A collection will be taken at this meeting. The proceeds will be given to Open Doors, who support Christians persecuted across the world. In the Eucharist this afternoon, I'll say a very little bit about the martyrdom of the Afghan underground church, supported by Open Doors, so their work is much needed. So please, could you give generously to ensuring their work continues, and a gift aid declaration form is included in your papers. Please ensure you reference your payment, GB collection, add your name as a donor in the appropriate space. Members need to be UK taxpayers and to have paid an amount of income or capital gains tax to cover all gift aid donations they make in this tax year, which I'm sure you know. Absolutely delighted that we have an Advent book to commend to you this year. The Bishop of St. Asaph has a supply of his Advent book at the meeting for purchase at a special price. Note the no cash rule. Arrangements can be made for you to follow up with payment for those who would like a copy. And as you would expect, not just the text, but all of the artwork which goes into that book, a beautiful looking book, has been at the hand of the Bishop of St. Asaph. Please do buy one of those books. It's really worthwhile reading. A little word about the way in which motions to amendment and motions work in the GB. You are entitled, of course, to suggest amendments to motions. At the meeting today, if you do wish to make an amendment, please give them to Mr. Simon Lloyd, our lay secretary, and an email sent to amendments@churchinwales.org.uk. And the same applies for Wednesday, if you wish to make an amendment to a motion. We turn to non-members. As you're aware, we always have people who are not members of G present with us. And I'm going to ask once again for your consent for them to participate in the work of the GB and to do so en bloc. For information, they're our own, the Reverend Chris Spur, the Reverend Canon Dr. Sandra Miller, Head of Life Events in the Church of England, Mr. Matthew Chinnery, Head of Legal Services, and Ayab Khan, who will speak under item 16. Could I ask, if you're happy for all of those to take place, please to show with your voting papers in the usual way. And I must ask it, are there any who are opposed? Thank you very much. Mae yna groeso, os ga i ddweud gair yn y Gymraeg, os gwelwch yn dda, mae yna groeso wrth gwrs i bawb siarad yn y iaith a'i hun, pa iaith sydd yn gyfleus i chi, a dyn ni'n falch iawn bod Tudur Jones yma gyda ni i sicrhau bod yna'r cyfieithiad ar gael. Heddi i ni'n defnyddio'r hedet, gai ofyn i bob un ohonoch chi defnyddio eich set eich hun ac nid yn rhannu gyda rai arall. On Wednesday, there will be a different facilitation, of course, for the translation service, and that will be explained on the day. Since the last meeting of the governing body, many people in Wales, particularly in hospitals, in care homes and in our communities, have been deeply affected by the pandemic. And sadly, many have died, and we will have ministered to them and known them. I want us to take just a moment to reflect on the context in which we meet. As the Church, the body of Christ, we are there with and alongside all who have suffered. And there's a plenary item on the agenda on Wednesday, which will centre on how we travel forward in the light of the pandemic. Could I ask just for a moment of quiet? Thank you very much. In very much the same tone, many of you will know that Archdeacon Sue Pennington, MBE, Archdeacon of the Gwent Valley since 2018, died suddenly on Saturday, the 24th of July, at her home. In the all too brief time that she was in post, she arrived in the church in Wales in 2018. She made a significant contribution to the life of the diocese as diocesan director of mission and, of course, to the province, appointed as Archdeacon, diocese-nominated Archdeacon on this governing body, as well as serving as an Archdeacon on the provincial safeguarding panel. Sue was awarded her MBE for services to the community, pioneering a flagship project to regenerate the centre of Cottingley in Bradford Diocese, where she was formerly vicar. We remember Sue Pennington today, and we give thanks for her contribution to the life and work of our church. Would you please stand? Dyro iddi o arglwydd orffwys tragwyddol, a llywyrchyd goleuni gwastadol arni. Eternal rest grant unto her, O Lord, and let light perpetual shine on her. Thank you very much. It's my great pleasure to welcome those who are visiting here today and representing church communities at our side. On Wednesday, the Reverend Aled Edwards, Chief Executive of Catene, will be with us but cannot be today. The Reverend Stephen Wigley, we think, is following our proceedings online but isn't able to be with us in person. And on Wednesday, the Reverend Marcus Robinson, who is moderator of the Presbyterian Church of Wales, will be present with us. However, I'm delighted that someone who is with us in person is the Reverend Betty Wyn James, who is president of the Undeb yr Annibynnwyr Gymraeg. Betty, croeso cynnes I chi in ein falch bod chi yma. There is, of course, an opportunity not to vote, but to participate in the debates. And Betty understands this. And if she does speak, we look forward to hearing what she has to say. However, I think that that requires, I'm just going to check the approval of the governing body. Standing approval is already granted. Standing, lovely. Thank you very much, Matthew. That's very helpful. In which case we can move on back to our agenda and to the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th and 15th of April 2021. You were asked to notify in advance of any changes proposed to those minutes, and none have been received. Could I therefore sign the minutes as a correct record of the meeting of the governing body held on the 14th and 15th of April 2021, and for you to show by raising your cards? Are there any who disapprove? There are none. Thank you very much. Members were asked to notify the Secretariat by Tuesday, the 31st of August, of any matters that they may wish to raise, and no comments have been received on the minutes. There are no matters arising. So we turn now to the presidential address. I'll be speaking in Welsh to begin with, if you'd like to use your headsets. Jyst I checio unwaith eto bod y cyfieithu yn gweithio. Os ar unrhyw broblem, fedrwch chi just codi eich dwylo. Everything is good. Thank you. Wel, gyfeillion a chydweithwyr, unwaith eto croeso cynnes I bob un ohonoch chi. Wrth ni ddechrau yn rhydd o'r pandemig Covid, mae heddi yn cyfle i'r esgobion ddiolch i'r rai sydd wedi bod yn gofalu am bobl eraill yn ystod y cyfnod hwn. Yn ein cartrefi nyrsio a'n cartrefi gofal, yn ein hysbytau a rai sydd wedi bod yn symariad tregarog fel petai, ac wedi treulio amser yn gwneud yn siŵr fod pobl yn ddiogel. I ni'n diolch i'r gwasanaeth iechyd yn benodol. Glanhawyr a rheolwyr, nyrsys ac ymgynghorwyr, arlwywyr a staff atadol. Mae hyn dych chi wedi gyflawni gydag ymrwymiad enfawr yn arwrol, ac mae'r genedl gymaint yn eich dyled fel na fydd yn gallu eich addalu. Ond da ni hefyd eisiau diolch i'n heglwysi ni, y clerigion sydd wedi dal ati yn ysgafn droed wrth ganfod ffyrdd newydd ac arloesol o afalu am eraill. A chynulleid faoedd hefyd sydd wedi dangos nerth cariad wrth ei gwaith, wrth galon y gymuned. Dyn ni eisiau diolch i chi o waelod y calon a dweud y mor falch dyn ni o'r hyn yn dych chi wedi rhoi wrth wasanaethu Crist. Diolch i chi gyd. Roedd hefyd eisiau diolch yma i'r tîm taleithiol. Mae lefel y proffesiynoldeb y mae cydweithwyr yn dau sgwar y Callahan wedi'n dangos, yn enwedig pan nad oedd y reolau bob amser yn glir, wedi bod yn eithriadol. Mae rai sydd wedi bod yn rhoi'r canllawiau diweddara i ni ar sut i aros yn y ddiogel yn heiddi diolch arbennig. Dyma'r digwyddiad mwyaf arwyddo-cawol i effeithio ar ddynoliaeth ers yr ail ryfel byd. A dyma'r pandemig gweitha ers ffliw Sbaenaidd 1918 hyd at 20. Mae'r effeithiau ar ein heconomi ac ar ein llesiant genedlaethol wedi bod yn llethol. Efallai y bod yn rhy gynnar i ddeall a disgrifio i ba raddau y mae bywyd yn cael ei ail-ffurfio. Yn y gweithle, yn ein cymunedau, neu hyd yn oed ei effaith ar yr economi fyd eang. Mae tirwedd bywyd yn newid ac yng eiriau Sant Iwan, allan o'i cyd-testun, mae'n wir, nid amlygwyd eto beth a fyddwn. Ac felly, wrth gwrs, hefyd mae'r cyd-destun y mae'n heglwsi'n y gweinyddu ynddo hefyd wedi newid. Dyn ni wedi gweld ffyrdd newydd o fod yn eglwys yn ymddangos, fel addoli ar-lein. Dyn ni'n penderfynu beth i fynd gyda ni ar gam nesaf y daith, a beth yw adael yn ôl. Dyn ni'n gweld y gallai bod llai nag oedd cyn Covid yn dod i addoli'n bersonol, a bydd y crebachu yn sylfaen ein cefnogaeth yn codi cwestiynau o'r newydd ynghylch ein cenhadaeth, ein heiddo a'n harian hefyd. Ond mae anogaeth allanol wastad wedi ffurfio diben a ffurf Cristnogaeth. Arweiniodd erlyd ar eglwys gynnar at y teithiau cenhadol cyntaf, a galwadau tasgau newydd at alw'r diaconiaid gyntaf. Nid maint yr her oedd yn cyfrif erioed, ond graddfa'r ymateb ffyddlon. Gan gofio hynny, fe hoffwn i ystyried beth allai ymateb yn dda i'r heriau olygu. Bathodd yr athronydd a chymdeithasegwr o'r Almaen Max Weber yr ymadrodd awdurdod y ddwy diderfyn, the authority of the eternal yesterday. Ei honiad oedd bod cyfreithlondeb cymdeithas a etifeddodd ddealltwriaeth gref o awdurdod yn deillio o'r traddodiad neu'r arferiad hwnnw. Gallwn ni uniaethu â hyn oherwydd mae gennym ninnau ffynonellau tebyg, yr ysgrythurau, traddodiadau ac wrth gwrs reswm. Mae yna ffynonellau o awdurdod sy'n angori ein cenhadaeth a'n gweinidogaeth yn niw. Mae cymeriad apostolaidd ein ffydd ni yn hanfodol. Parhau gyda dysgeidiaeth Crist a'r apostolion cyntaf yw'r pwysigrwydd pennaf. Ond mae yna beryg i unrhyw sefydliad sy'n gweithredu yn ôl awdurdod etifeddol a dim ond hynny, i gael ei ffosileiddio. Mae methu ag ymateb i heriau yn golygu nad oes yna ryddid i ddarganfod beth mae Duw yn ei wneud ym mhob man o'n cwmpas ni. Gallwn ni ddychmygu pa fath o eglwys fyddwn ni pe bai ein hynaffiaid wedi bod yn amwys ynghylch caethwasiaeth, a heb ddatblygu dealltwriaeth iawnach o werth dynoliaeth wedi ei ffurfio ar ddelwedd Duw. Neu be fyddwn ni petai heb wynebu bod merched yn gallu cael ei galw i'r offeiriadaeth ac i'r esgobaeth hefyd. Mae eglwys nad yw'n gallu datblygu, nad yw'n digon ysgafn y droed yn anhebyg o fod ag iaith i gyfathrebu gyda'r cymdeithas o'i cwmpas. Mae gennym ni gyfle i deithio ymhellach ac ymhellach i'r hyn y mae Duw nain galw ni i wneud ac i fod. Mae'n tasg yn hynod genhadol. Mae hyd yn oed ein trafodaeth heddi yn ein hanfod ynghylch a ydyn ni eisiau ffurfio bywyd hwnnw i fod yn fwy ac yn well. Fel bod llai yn teimlo na allan nhw gredu ac yn teimlo bod mwy o wahoddiad iddyn nhw berthyn mewn gwirionedd. Rwyf wrth fy modd gyda slogan esgobaeth Lerpwl, eglwys fwy i wneud mwy o wahaniaeth. Change now to English. So I want to say something, if I may, to colleagues today who are extremely vexed and troubled by our debate today. We understand as bishops that a change of this nature to our polity will be painful for some. Such a novel development will be regarded as a departure and an aberration, and thus regarded it would be considered as an act of disobedience. To depart from Christ's word is to depart from Christ. But every development is to some degree a departure. Something changes whenever there is a new expression of practice. And even when such a change appears consonant with a stated position, it is nonetheless a change. When the church changed its position on forbidding meat with blood in it, or saw that slavery in all and any form was wicked, there was change. The authority of the eternal yesterday mustn't become a millstone around our necks, but rather provide a courageous embrace of what God is doing in the world around us today. Mission always lies at the heart of faith, and being alive to God, to what might happen next, is a part of remaining curious and open to God's leading. And so I've recently been introduced to Benedict Anderson's work on imagined communities. Some of you will know this work, you've got there first. His thesis is that, he uses a nation primarily. A nation is a socially constructed community, he says, imagined by the people who perceive themselves as part of that group. Imagined communities are also created by others, such as the media, or even dispersed groups online who wield images or ideas that create identity. And people will choose which images or ideas they relate to and then reinforce their belonging to that community. So an obvious example is an online group where people participate because of their interest in the subject matter. Now, in this context, the Bench of Bishops have recently requested that work be done on whether the life of the church is truly arranged for mission, truly fit for purpose. If you like, whether we can imagine a better way of being and of doing. Some of these issues relate to systems and culture, some around structure. Still others are profoundly spiritual and even existential. Will we believe that there is a good future for our church, that the gospel truly is the power of God for salvation with capacity to change human lives? Will we front load our finances and our priorities to the transforming power of God at the forefront of our thinking? And will we align finances to meet our aims and our objectives. The point is that we're addressing deep, deep issues of what our church might be in the years ahead, what kind of community, what kind of church might take shape in and through renewed worship and godly service and our witness to Jesus Christ. Will we demonstrate a life that really is authentic, even if broken, even if fractured and marred, and even when we disagree? Will somehow the signs of godliness and goodness be seen in us? Now, colleagues will have been conscious that other provinces are debating the future of the parish system and getting worked up about it in a right royal manner. I am tempted, but I won't say much more about that. Strongly held views on whether to ditch the treasured parochial system have been articulated in the press. Now, in the church in Wales, we committed ourselves to mission and ministry areas. That isn't the vision. To establish those, that's not the vision. The vision's the kingdom of God. It is that means, that vehicle that might enable us to do our work more fruitfully, recognizing all that is good in the parochial model, the local, the importance of presence, diversity of worship, teams of lay and ordained, cooperating, but also welcoming new things, new expressions of church, pioneering models, church plants, festival churches, social enterprise initiatives. And as diverse expressions of church become more normal, there will be new questions about how we grow new vocations, women and men, who can lead and who can direct, to the priesthood and lay leaders to offer the support that we need. We ought to be in no doubt that this hybrid way of working, this mixed ecology or economy, if you want, of church life is here. It's here to stay, and across the whole of Wales. And so in his book, Beyond Duty, A Passion for Christ, the Heart for Mission, by Tim Dearborn, he says something very profound. God's church falters from exhaustion because Christians erroneously think that God has given them a mission to perform in the world. Rather, the God of mission has given his church to the world. It is not the church of God that has a mission in the world, but the God of mission who has a church in the world. And so it's liberating to realize that the Missio Dei does not depend upon us. A church which exhausts itself in attempting what is good, but perhaps not essential, will be as dispirited as it will be fruitless. And the COVID pandemic has asked questions about the essentials, perhaps as never before. The theology of this is profound because it flows from a belief that God is in this mix. The prophet Isaiah spoke of the way in which God would not be contained or constrained by the past. He wrote, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you perceive it? I'm making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." And so I welcome the work of Mark Jarman in epistles, drawing on the conviction that God is at work in God's world. He writes, "Eternal life may be coming back to this world, perfected, and without your permission." If we believe the wind blows where it wills, we hear its sound, we do not know where it comes from or where it goes, we need to be alive to God as never before. What are the things that God is doing, and how are we catching up with this God revealed in Jesus Christ? To see our task like that is to be open to what God has prepared for those who love him. It's to see the task through Christ's eyes and to be set free to do what is truly important. And so I want to end the address with some words I used earlier, but in Welsh, because they seem to me to both set the tone and direction that we need as a church. You don't need your headsets. I'll give it to you in English as well. And this is what I think we must grasp. What is significant has never been for the church, has never been the size of the challenge. It has always been the scale of the faithful response. And so for us, friends, to respond well, for strength to respond as we should, we ought to commit and pray in the name of our Lord and Saviour, Jesus Christ, to whom be praise. Amen. I was so nervous you were going to ask for us to go into committee stage in the middle of the presidential address. We now come to session 2 and life event resources. One of the things that was frustrating about COVID is all of the momentum that we built up around life events was rather lost. And so really to give new and fresh momentum to that, I'm delighted that once again Dr. Sandra Miller is with us, who will be sharing in the presidential, in the life events address, and Chris Burr as well. So I'm now going to hand over to the team to lead us in this next part of our meeting. Chris and I think Cherry to introduce.
Cherry Van, Bishop of Monmouth, Chair, members of Governing Body. It gives me great pleasure to introduce this item on life events with a presentation and an overview of some exciting resources to support and enrich the Church's ministry in our local communities. Before I go any further, may I urge Governing Body members to refrain from looking at the content of your packs. They will be revealed and discussed as part of the presentation in a few minutes. And can I also check that those who would like a pack in Welsh have found them? They are on the side of the window ledge. If any want a copy in Welsh now, perhaps we could arrange for that to happen before we go any further. There's some hands up, if we can just facilitate that, please. We were hoping to have this presentation in around tables where packs in Welsh would have been available, but because of the necessary socially distancing, we've not been able to do that. I think there's Chris, I think there's another one here at the front. Thank you. Does everyone who wish to have a copy in Welsh now have one? I think Chris has some if you... That's great, thank you. But please don't look at them yet. Baptisms, weddings and funerals, the occasional offices which the church offers, are what has been described as the bread and butter of parish ministry. They provide opportunities for the church, through its clergy and lay leaders, to meet and engage with members of their parishes at key moments in their lives, and to be alongside them, meeting them where they are, in their joys and their sorrows. The birth of a child, the commitment of two people in marriage, the loss of a loved one. They are, in that sense, missional opportunities. Through these life events, these pivotal moments, the church can offer both hospitality and welcome. We can use them both to assure and to demonstrate to the families who come to us something of God's love, his care for them and his delight in their lives. They also provide us with opportunities for loving service to those who may have little or no connection with the church at all. It has been said that the churches that grasp these opportunities, that still come to us even in this very secular context in which we are set, are churches that grow. For through these life events, connections are made and relationships are established that can continue and be built on way beyond the events themselves. Sadly, and for all kinds of reasons, the church has not made the most of the opportunities for mission and ministry that baptisms, weddings, and funerals provide. It is my hope and prayer, as I trust it is for all of us gathered here this morning, that we can engage once again with these life events with renewed vision and energy, using them to share the love of God and demonstrate to those in our parishes, even if only for a while, the welcome that God extends to all. I'm delighted to welcome on your behalf the Reverend Canon Dr. Sandra Miller. Some of you were on governing body in September 2019 when Dr. Miller came and presented her research on life events to us then. Others will be aware of her work. We had hoped to have had her back with us over a year ago, but for reasons that are now all too familiar, her return has had to be delayed twice until now. The history is outlined in Agenda Paper 7. The delay has meant, however, that there's been additional time for new research and further work in the light of the pandemic. So we have a pretty up-to-date picture. And I know that Dr. Miller will be saying something to us about where life events fit now in her presentation. But before we go into that presentation, a word from the Reverend Chris Burr, tutor at St. Padans and our provincial lead on life events, who's been working hard with Dr. Miller and others to get us to this point. Chris, thank you.
Burada, good morning. First of all, my thanks to Bishop Cherry for introducing our presentation today. When I was appointed to St. Padans in 2019, life events was one of the first projects that landed on my desk. And Dr. Miller was one of the very first people I met for coffee in my new role. Some 2.5 years, innumerable cups of coffee, and 2 COVID-delayed rollouts later, it's really good to be invited back by governing body to offer an update on the Life Events Initiative. Later in the presentation, I'm going to be highlighting some of the materials and resources that Bishop Cherry mentioned and that we've been working on in the meantime, in preparation for what we hope will be a national rollout without further delay this coming autumn. Before then, though, I'm going to ask Dr. Miller to remind us just why Life Events Ministries are absolutely key to the mission and ministry of the church going forward, and to share some of her team's very latest research with us. Dr. Miller has been head of Welcome and Life Events for the Church of England since 2013 and has written several books, including Life Events, Mission and Ministry at Baptisms, Weddings and Funerals. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome the Reverend Canon, Dr. Sandra Miller.
Well, hello, everybody. I have to say, it's truly a privilege to be here with you. It's truly exciting to be here with you. I know that some of you have been joining us in the last 18 months when we've been doing various webinars in the Church of England. You've always been very welcome to be part of those. But I have to say, for myself, what's very exciting is this is the first live bit of public speaking to an audience that I have done since beginning of March last year. And some of you have heard me speak before will know that I love nothing better than an audience. So it's probably just as well that we have a time limit on this. Otherwise, I might slip into my role as stand-up comedian for the Church of England or something like that. But it is wonderful that we should be here in Wales, in the church in Wales, at this really exciting moment to talk to you again about life events. And as you'll see, I've called this presentation, this section, Building Bridges, because the bridges that we're building are not about anything that's inside the church, but for this moment right now, the bridges that we're building are about our imagination. Imagine is a great word to begin a time like this with. Imagine something coming into being that might not have been there, something renewed and made fresh. Imagine, as Bishop Cherry has said, being able to engage in people's lives, right there in the ordinariness of the things that happen to them every day. Imagine something that reaches every generation, not just the old, not just the young, but across the lifespan. Imagine opportunities that allow you to talk to people about things that really matter, truly about matters of life and death. Imagine giving people who may never have stepped foot into a church before, imagine giving them an opportunity to meet God's people, to meet the church. And imagine that you can just give them an opportunity to hear an incredible message of hope and a message of joy, a message that we call good news. Well, this incredible opportunity turns out to be the thing that as the church we have done for generation upon generation, century upon century. It turns out to be that bedrock of ministry. Whether we call it the baptism of a child or we call it a christening. Christenings, weddings and funerals give us all these opportunities. Imagine that we're doing them and taking hold of those opportunities. And the word we now use to describe this is life events. The reason we use that word is because this reflects an outward focus of being there in the midst of an event that is taking place of the lives where we love and serve people. And this work is rooted in a couple of things. First, and most importantly, it's rooted in the gospel. It's rooted in our scriptures, actually beyond the gospel through into the Old Testament. It's what I call seeds and needs. It's rooted in the idea that God is a generous, extravagant, prodigal God with the good news of God's love. That parable of the sower, where we're simply sharing the good news of the kingdom with all those whom we meet, wherever we meet them. Not worrying about the consequences, not worrying about who's going to grow and who isn't, but carrying on, sharing it, using those opportunities. And it's also rooted in those gospel stories of Jesus who walked about amongst people's daily lives, meeting real needs. Jesus was present to family life. He was present when there were children around. He was present at a wedding. And of course, he was present at times of difficulty and danger and loss and grief. And he wasn't just present, he engaged with people in those moments. He spoke to them and met with them. And most importantly for us to remember is that when Jesus met with them in those moments, he transformed the situation. He transformed the situation with those children gathered there with their parents that day when the disciples wanted to send them away. Jesus transformed it from a moment of rejection to one of acceptance. At the wedding at Cana, he transformed it from a moment of disappointment into a moment of joy. And of course, at those various moments where Jesus met someone in death, he transformed it from despair to hope and literally from death to life. We'll stop moving. Oh, it was moving really well. Now we're stuck here. Let's wait and see what happens. Mike will make something happen. Ah, excellent. It's also rooted in, secondly, the work that we do in what I call the life of the church. And at this point, I mean the church wherever you are, in the communities where you live and love and serve. And something about us being there for people in these moments in their life contributes to what we often call the common good, a sense of flourishing and well-being in our communities. And of course, that means we contribute to family life across all generations, being there for people and supporting them. But as we've heard, for us particularly, this work is rooted in something we've been doing for a decade or more now in the Church of England. We've been researching, we've been developing insights, we've developed resources, and we've engaged with thousands of clergy and lay people, helping them to think about this moment. And to do the thing that our former Archbishop of York, Archbishop Sandra said, which is to remind ourselves that all of these people, whether they're coming to be married, to have a funeral, or to bring a child to baptism, all of them are guests of Jesus Christ. For it is his church that we're offering, as we're part of offering that to the world. So that's where we've come from. Our hope is that in this work, I'll say this seems to have slowed down. We hope that in this work, what we'll be doing is meeting people in the reality of their lives. And I think one of the really, really distinctive things about the work we do with life events that requires a bit of mind shift often for the church is that what we're doing here is taking as our starting point not who we are and what we do and want to do, but what's really going on in the reality of everyday life for the people we meet. And we want those people to know and discover who we are, what we do, and what we offer. And also, we want us to be able to understand and build those bridges by discovering more about what's going on for them, helping them in their lives. This work is also about inspiring and resourcing churches to do all this that we've done for generations, but to do it particularly well in the 21st century. And underlying all of that, the goal is always that these people that we meet are on their faith journey through life, discovering that they are loved by God and have a place with God's people. So, who are the people that we meet? We talk about two groups of people in life events, and some of you have seen these numbers before because we have nothing to update them with from last time we were here, owing to what has happened in the last couple of years. But the first group of people are the people we get to talk to that we call warm contacts. These are the people we've already heard mentioned. People who of their own choice come along to us and say, can you help me? Will you meet me at this point in life's journey? We get to have real conversations with them. And these are the numbers that we work out for the church in Wales, using the statistics that we have. So for every wedding that we do, we get at least 2 people to talk to. We often get more because as well as a bride and groom, we may also be talking to parents and others as well. But in Wales, that meant 2,500 weddings, 5,000 people. A funeral, well, that's very interesting. How many people do we get to talk to at a funeral? Those of us that are privileged to take funerals will know it can range from 1 person or it can range to 21 people in a room. One is always easier than the other, work that out. But we take as a little average 3 people, often a surviving spouse or life partner and a couple of adult children. That means, in Wales, you've got to have over 18,000 conversations with people, deep conversations at a time in their life when someone they know has died. And then finally, there's the baptism or christening. The baptism of a child under 12 is what we're talking about in particular. Now, potentially, you could get to talk to 6 people. Most children, though by no means all, have 2 parents. There's a child at the heart of it, maybe too young to talk to right now, but may not be. And there will be a minimum of 3 godparents. There may be others. There may be grandparents that you talk to, other family members. But if we say there were 6 people that potentially you could have a conversation with, that would give you nearly 33,000 people to talk to. This isn't just a passing hello. This is a proper conversation. That's around 56,000 people that you get to talk to. But beyond that, of course, there's also all these other people who come along, who we meet, who come as guests to these special services. The friends and family of those at the heart of the event. And we call those the wide contacts. These are often the people we don't even think about. We actually don't even record very well always the numbers, particularly when funerals, for example, take place at premises other than our own, at crematoria. We don't even think of recording how many people were present. And yet, as you can see, before the pandemic, if we were doing a wedding with an average congregation of 70, a christening might have had 70 people there, a funeral might have had 50 people there. If we add those numbers up, in the church in Wales, in that year, you would have met something like 863,000 people. And I know from the comparison I can do with the figures in the Church of England, I know that that adds up to far, far more people than actually come to church at Christmas. Over the year, we meet more people coming to life event services than come to church at Christmas. Now, many of them, of course, will be the same people who are occasional churchgoers. But increasingly, with things like life events, it is for many people the first opportunity they have had to come inside a church, to meet something of God's people and hopefully to meet something of God and realise that this place is okay and it's there for them. That's 850,000 people who are somewhere, we don't know where, on a journey of faith. 850,000 stories of lives, of people that we meet. 850,000 people for whom we can sow something of the seed of the good news of the kingdom of God, of God's love for them revealed in Jesus Christ, not knowing where it might take them. Except we do know a little bit. Because, as we heard, we've done recent research in January this year in the Church of England, where we looked at all sorts of different things in the light of the pandemic. We discovered what it meant to people to have been bereaved this year, and I'll share some more of those figures shortly. But as part of that research, we also discovered some interesting things about the reach of life events into our community. And the staggering thing we realised is that in the last 5 years, over half of the population had attended a life event service. Now, I know that's in England, and that may be different in the church in Wales, but I suspect it will still be very, very significant. And what was even more significant to us was that those who have been involved in organising a life event service, that is a wedding, a christening, or a funeral, who've been at the heart of it, those warm contacts, the thing that makes them feel connected and warm towards the church more than anything else that's happened is that involvement in organising an event. And we discovered that whilst we now have less than 3% of the population in England actively involved in church, we discovered that nearly 20%, 19% of people actually feel warm and connected with the church, and primarily because they've had an experience of one of these life event moments. If we do these well, the impact is very significant. We also discovered something else really interesting, which is that And I always hesitate with this word because it can sound like we're loading pressure on, but I don't quite mean it in that way. But we discovered that 65% of people expect that the church will be there for them at life's big moments, especially around the loss of someone they know. 65%. And what expectation means is more like, not, well, they ought to be there, but more like they will be. That's what they do, isn't it? Of course they'd be there. And if we add in those who actually think very likely that they'd be there, we discovered it was 95%. Fewer than 5% of the population didn't want us to be there for them at those moments in life. High expectation that this is something that we do, to be there for people. But we're also aware, of course, as we've heard, that we're living in a very, very dynamic and changing culture. We know, and this isn't going away, that there's a huge increase of choice for people. Every day, people can make different choices about their wedding, about the funeral they have, about the bereavement care they look for, about how to celebrate the arrival of a child. And that is going to continue to escalate. But we also know, and the loss of these things in the pandemic amplified and reinforced it, that moments of celebration, moments to gather and be together and to discover that we belong, remain really important to people. And that when people come together for rituals and ceremonies to mark life's big moments, they need those moments to feel memorable and they need them to feel personal. But we're living in a post-church world, in a world where people do not understand what we do. And perhaps even more challenging for us, they have a lot of ideas from long ago about what it is that we do. And one of the most challenging things for us is the expectation and understanding of two things. One, that the church tells you what you can have. One size fits all. There is no creativity if you come to a church for a life event service. How do we help people understand that we reflect a God who is uniquely interested in them and their life? And secondly, that people self-exclude. They have already decided that they don't fit, that they're not eligible, particularly often that they're simply not good enough to come and even ask us to be there for them. But we also know that post-pandemic, there's a huge impact on these life events moments. In my more depressed moments, I wonder what will happen, that we weren't there for people in those moments and that we'll have to work even harder to recover our impact and our connection with people. And yet, in spite of all that changing culture, the great thing is, do you know what? Babies are still being born day after day after day. People are still falling in love and wanting to commit in marriage. And of course, people will always be dying of all kinds of causes. And do you know what? We are still there for them. And God's love is still there for them. Let's see if we're moving on. So how do we do this? How are we there for them? The biggest way we do this is in making relationship with people. And I'm just going to take you through why I think life events work impacts much more widely than a day and an event. There's 4 stages in this making of relationship with people. Firstly, our contact with people from the moment they ask. Secondly, how we build and prepare with them. Now, of course, that varies enormously from a few days with the funeral to up to 2 years or more when people plan a wedding. But we have a moment to build a relationship and to prepare for the day. We have the day itself, which is often what we're first thinking about in our minds. But really importantly, we're there for all the days to come. You can see this lovely chart, which I probably showed you before, which we use a lot, reminds us of what we're doing in building bridges. We're taking people from that moment of fear and anxiety to a moment of trust and delight. One of the stories that I use a great deal now to reflect on where we are from Scripture is the story of Zacchaeus. For me, Zacchaeus has become the ultimate person who's trying to get in touch with us, with Jesus. And the thing is, the person who makes themselves feel awkward, who feels embarrassed, who's not sure of the reception they're going to get in this, is not the people already following Jesus, but it's Zacchaeus. And many of those who come to us and say, could I get married in church? You know, will the church be there for a funeral? Many of those are feeling very, very like Zacchaeus, anxious and worried. And Jesus does a couple of things. Jesus changes that fear and anxiety to one of anticipation and excitement when he greets him, acknowledges him, speaks to him, recognizes who he is. And then secondly, he gives him reassurance and confidence by telling him what's going to happen next. We all know the line from the song, I'm coming to your house for tea. And that's interesting, isn't it? Jesus does not say to Zacchaeus, aha, before I can talk about this with you, would you step down and join the disciples following me for a 6-week program? And when I've explained all of that to you and what I'm about, at that point you just stay with me where I am and follow me, and that will make all the difference to your life. No, he says, let me come where you are, journey with you into your space. That is worth a lot of reflection. I sort of reflect on it all the time. We want people to become those who know that they can trust us and they're delighted to be with us. And that trust and delight reflects the trust and the delight that God has in them. So, where do we go? The first encounter. What is the impact of life events? It means we have to think about everything. We have to think about our presence in our communities. How do people know that we're there for them? What does our website say about weddings, funerals, baptism of a child? What do our notice boards say? What does our social media say? What stories are we telling? What language do we use? How do we welcome people? Do we say, yes, let me give you a form to fill in? Or do we say, congratulations, let's hear your story. How did you meet? Oh, when was your baby born? Oh, I'm so really sad to hear that. Do we start with those words, or do we start with the process? How do we meet people? How do we reflect warmth when we meet them? And how do our processes change? What do we give them that reflects the love of God? Then, as we meet with them over the next season, we prepare and build for the day. One of the hardest things for us is addressing this concern that people have that what we offer is a one-size-fits-all. We're very much living in a culture where people want to feel part of what's going on, to feel they've contributed to shaping the service that we offer. This doesn't mean that every single service that we offer has to be unique and different. What it means is just discussing it with people and making sure that we're reflecting choices as much as possible, that they feel part of the process. And also that we keep in touch with them during the process. One of the things that most impresses me about a lot of funeral directors, good funeral directors, is the way that they will even text or phone a family on the morning of the funeral to reassure them that everything is all right. And I feel challenged myself about the fact that how much contact have I had with them in the previous 2 weeks. With a wedding, it can be even more difficult. We take a booking for 2 years' time, and then we have no contact with them at all until the day that we want to invite them to come to something that we're offering, which might be hearing their bands being read or coming to marriage preparation. Their venue would have invited them to lots of things on the journey, kept in touch all the way through. In the pandemic, churches that had a good relationship with wedding couples were the ones that were able to respond fast and quickly and do incredibly lovely weddings as soon as restrictions were lifted, because they had a relationship with couples. And I loved the creative stories that came out of weddings that were organised at 3 days' notice, where local people produced flowers in the doorway, just to make a wedding happen for a couple. And it was there in those stories because they had a relationship with someone from the church who proactively was in touch at that time. And I think, importantly, one of the things we need to do as God's people is to start praying for people in this situation. And not just praying for them on the day, but praying for them from the moment we find out. Everyone, all of God's people, can be involved in praying for those at the heart of life events. Of course, we get to the day itself, and that's the thing we're all thinking about, all those lovely photos we've seen of weddings and christenings, less so of funerals, although that has changed quite a lot, actually, with social media and with Zoom and live streaming of funerals. There are more images of funerals now. But on the day, we discovered in all our research, right up to the most recent research we've done around bereavement and grief, that what people are still wanting is something that feels significant, and that's often the word they will use, and special, that they feel that they've been in an event that's memorable, that's made them feel cherished and loved. that they come away with a sense of warmth and positivity. This is a quote from a piece of research. I sort of quite like this one, really. Priests are lovely people, but they've got to lighten up a bit. You know? It's kind of some sense that people have of worrying that we're going to do something to them that's going to be very heavy. And that's also true of funerals. In fact, this quote is from funerals research, that people feel that we kind of somehow need to be warm in the process, relational. The good news in many ways is that the expectations of the church are so low that anything we do that's nice and warm raises the bar, you know? Smiling changes everything. I think there are two things that might change our mission a great deal, and one is smiling, the other is cake. But we'll come on to that. Cake reflects kindness, smiling reflects relationship. Actually, rather interesting, I'll say this here, because as a church, what we do very often is worry most about the words that we're using on the day. Whether they will understand them, whether they like them, whether they're right, whether they're wrong, they ought to take them seriously, do they mean them, all sorts of different things depending on the service. But it turns out that for those who come to these events, whether the guests or whether those at the heart of the event, the words actually are not the thing that they go away with worrying about. The thing that distresses people the most is when there's been nothing that is warm, significant, memorable and engaging about the event. It's like if you go to see a good play, isn't it? The words are one thing, but if it was done in a wooden way, then actually you come away saying that wasn't very good. The words could be done again by another person and they would be fantastic. And it's the way that we do things that makes the big impact for people. So the day itself is only one part of the whole life events process. The final part, and you will see in a moment when it appears, I've put this in red. And the reason I've put all the days to come in red is simply because, although this is the fourth thing, it's probably the single most important part of the process. Most of us think when we've got through a wedding, when we've heard about a funeral happening, when the day of the christening is over, we're done and dusted. But it turns out that what happens next is the most important. How we keep in touch with people makes all the difference in the world. Keeping in touch with people, giving them clear information about what's happening, but also about how they can live out their faith. How many families leave a baptism with ideas about how to pray for their child each day? How many of you are praying, especially for baptism families this week, if a child is starting nursery or school? How many of you have been in contact with a family who's starting secondary school to say, today we're praying at our church for them? Pop in if you can, whatever it might be that you're able to do. Remembering that it's about their life as well as ours. Inviting them specifically. Being interested in their lives. Having conversation and friendship. There's a world of difference between saying to someone, oh, I'd like, you can come back next week, to saying, shall I meet you for coffee? When you say to someone, can I meet you for coffee? You're saying, can I be your friend? Come back to this church building, you just call in to another event. Build friendship with people where we can. And incredibly, in all our research, one of the most important things we discovered is giving people an opportunity to help is really important. Letting them be part of what we do. So what happens afterwards is hugely important. For each of the different life events, we have significant and special insights. But I'm not going to go through those with you today because that's what we'll be doing in the training that we have as we go around the different dioceses. But just to highlight one or two that come along, and particularly I want to highlight some of the new things about grief and bereavement. We know when people bring a child to be baptised that they have really serious motives. Right now is an incredibly difficult time to bring a child into the world, to receive a child into your family. You know, I've got lots of us will be at that age and stage of life where we have little people in our world. And I just think it's extraordinary, the future that these children are facing. You know, the worries that parents have. What kind of world is it? We can be there for them to talk about how God will be with them through all the future. That big God who has been there in the past and is in the present as in the future. The church isn't going away suddenly. God's people is not going away suddenly. And above all, God is not going away suddenly. They have some serious worries, some serious motives, and often are looking for a sense of placing the child on a right path that will help them to negotiate all that lies ahead. We know with weddings, perhaps more than the other events, the way in which people decide, without even finding any information out, that they couldn't possibly ask to have a wedding in church because they're not good enough, because they're not that right kind of people. So we need to help couples understand that they can come to us and ask. And we know that they take it seriously when they do. It's a choice that they're making. Funerals is really interesting. This is where the new research that we've done has shown us a lot more. We know that as a church, that expectation that will be there is that we should be the people and the place that people come to which will talk about matters of life and death. That we are the people who can listen and pray and care. That people are looking for that personal, unique service. And actually, in our research, that people still want to find that message of hope and comfort. But perhaps our biggest strength as churches in Wales, just as in England, is that we're in communities. We live amongst people who are grieving. You may not know, but in our research we discovered that in the last 12 months, and this was research done in January this year, 7 out of 10 people said that they knew of someone who had died where they would have gone to the funeral. 4 out of 10 people said they'd lost someone close to them. That means that every service that you do, Sundays, weddings, funerals, christenings, any service you do right now, there are people who have lost or have experienced the death of someone they know in the last period of time. It's enormous, the impact of death and bereavement, which is why now I've started to talk about what I call the fourth life event. I'm sure that sounds like some kind of advertising campaign at that point. But the fourth life event I'm now talking about is actually, in a way, bereavement and remembering. Because we've realised that as, sadly, or as realistically, the church takes fewer and fewer funerals, that has not meant that fewer and fewer people are grieving. So whether or not we've taken a funeral for someone, we need to be there for them. And the research we did on grief in the pandemic told us how important our spaces were for people in particular. 2/3 of people wanted to use our outdoor space for reflection. Simple things that have been a huge success for churches and made a really big community impact in the pandemic have been things like prayer trees outside churches where anyone can come by. A cairn being built in a churchyard where people can place a stone as a sign of their thinking. A bench, a seat marked as the thinking seat. These are the things that use our outdoor spaces in communities. But also using our indoor spaces. Many of us know how important it is for people, how many people light candles. And we know when we look at prayer notice boards in churches, when we can have visitors in, we know that predominantly those prayers are about loss and grief, either in our own lives or for those we're thinking about. So providing those times is really important. We discovered that ritual and symbol was really important. And also that there's no limit to how many times a person will be remembered because we never become unbereaved. And one of our greatest strengths as the people of God is that we don't have a deadline that says, sorry, you can't come here anymore. Oh, I'm sorry, you're remembering someone who died 20 years ago, or you can't come. Interestingly, even this very day, some of you may have heard yesterday on the news about the young woman Sarah Harding who died aged 39 of breast cancer, a public celebrity figure. And I was really fascinated that the BBC chose to therefore talk about grief at this point. And the doctor on there this morning talked about the fact that she's dealing with more and more people every day coming about grief. And the death of a public figure stirs up our own personal griefs as well, because we never become unbereaved, and we will always be there for people. So, the bereavement and remembering has become really important for us. So what we're talking about here is a journey we take people on from mission to discipleship, how with life events they go away with memories, they have good information, and that they have a local experience with you that might not connect them to your church afterwards, but will make them part of the story of the kingdom of God. All of these messages and more are the things we're going to be sharing with the church in Wales over the next few months. You can get more ideas from a website called the Church Support Hub, which is a Church of England website, but I know many of you use it because we have lots of practical ideas on there, and Chris will be explaining how some of these things are going to be made available in Wales as well. And we believe that the work around life events can have impact across every aspect of the church, on our mission and evangelism, on our confidence in who we are as God's people, that we have something good to share that people actually want to know about. That it will impact our church life, how we pray for people. And in doing that, it will affect our own discipleship as we think about prayer and welcome. It will impact how we care for people. And it will impact the processes, the practicalities that we do. And particularly, it will impact how we communicate with other people. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to Chris again, who's going to share some of the things that we're actually doing with the church in Wales at this time, and particular some of the resources that we're going to be sharing with you over the next few months. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm so pleased that Sandra shared some of those figures. Some of us may have seen most of those before, but the impact is no less. 56,000 direct contacts with people who've sought out the church, who are looking to have direct and meaningful conversations with us. 860,000 wider context every year that we're exposed to. No wonder life events is such a key part of the church's mission and ministry. Sandra, thank you. Thank you for your ongoing commitment and enthusiasm, particularly the last couple of years, that enthusiasm and commitment you've brought to our partnership between the Church in Wales and the Church of England's life events team. Now, as I mentioned earlier, and as Bishop Cherry and Sandra said, my particular job this morning is to share with you some examples of what we've been working on over the past 18 months or so. Our aim throughout has been to bring together a range of readily accessible resources to better help, support and equip our skilled practitioners as they undertake these key ministries every single day in our churches and in our wider communities, in every single corner of this amazing nation of ours. So the resources that we're going to run through very quickly this morning fall into three broad categories. So we produced a comprehensive range of printed materials, 2 suites of videos, and over 120 pages of additional online help and support. So if I may, we'll take a look at the printed materials first and foremost. So here we've brought together a range of materials designed to help ministers and other practitioners involved in wedding, christening, and funeral ministries. Now, on your seat today, as Bishop Cherry has already pointed out, you will have found a wallet containing a full set of all the printed materials that we've produced. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can whip them out yet. Keep them hanging on, they say. I say a full set. Unfortunately, one of my favourite items hasn't actually been delivered in time for today, so that will be missing, but I'll explain a bit more about that in a second. As Bishop Cherry has already explained, all of the items, leaflets, bookmarks, invitations, etc., these are all available in Welsh and in English. On your seats you had the English packs, but there are still some Welsh language packs there if you wish to exchange one. So I'll start by highlighting some of the wedding resources, and there are 2 lots of these really. The first is a rather nice folder which contains a set of 9 A5 sized booklets, and these are information booklets, ideal perhaps to present to couples at the first meeting, or perhaps to post out when an initial inquiry is made about holding a wedding at your church. And these booklets are designed to answer many of the practical questions and worries that people often have when they approach the church about a wedding. For example, as Sandra's already said, can anybody get married in church? Can I get married in church even if I'm not a regular churchgoer? What are the legal requirements? What do you mean by banns? What's that all about? What sort of music can I have? What sort of hymns can I have? What readings can I have? So they answer the basic questions. But in addition to those, there are a whole load of other leaflets and cards which may be useful. A card to give couples inviting them to hear their banns being read. A card to place in the pews on the wedding day to encourage people to pray for this newly married couple. A card to send from the church on the couple's first anniversary, and lots more. And most of these come in a range of colours and styles, so you choose your preference. And not everyone will want to use all of them, but some people will hopefully find them useful. Think Forrest Gump and a box of chocolates. Next, we'll look just one or two of the resources around christenings. And again, there's a varied range of materials on offer. Now, particularly, I like the godparent card that you can see there, and it should contain a fridge magnet. The versions you have a little square saying a fridge magnet should be here. And that's because, unfortunately, they haven't been delivered, which now means when I get home, I'll have 180 fridge magnets on my hands. But what a great way, a simple way to get people praying. People perhaps who aren't used to praying, who have never thought to pray before. They just have that magnet on their fridge to pray for their godchild every day. You're just one or two examples of a couple of others. And you'll notice from that the tagline that runs through most of the christening materials. The theme, the message, is very much that christening itself marks just the beginning of what we all hope will be just the first step in an amazing, lifelong journey of faith. On to funerals. And here the theme is one of light and hope, and of walking alongside people on what is often a painful and sometimes lonely journey. Much of the literature is very practical, but all of it is geared around helping to resource the church and helping them establish those positive and meaningful relationships. Now, I may mention earlier of a bilingual workbook, which is designed for use by PCCs, mission and ministry area councils, small home groups and the like. These are designed to encourage people to think more widely about the opportunities that exist in life events ministry, for churches and groups to explore ways in which they can encourage others to get involved. And because we want to encourage churches to really engage with this, we've committed to ensure that these will always remain free of charge going forward. Those workbooks, along with all the other life events printed resources, are available to order online from churchprinthub.org/Wales. The /Wales is important. I'm delighted to say that Christian Publishing and Outreach, who administer the Church Print Hub, have worked really, really hard with us on this and have created the Church in Wales's own section of the website, which is almost entirely bilingual. They've even appointed a Church in Wales partnership manager who is now quite keen to visit and try out some of her newly acquired Welsh language skills. She's still worrying about her tragals, her mutations, but I said, don't worry about that. Navigating the website is very straightforward. It's easy to scroll through or to search for what you're looking for. Or maybe just have a look through, pick and choose which leaflets might suit you best. All of the materials on there have been listed with the Welsh and the English equivalents next to one another, so it's easy to find what you need in whatever language. Whilst the prices are really good, not everyone will be able to or wish to purchase a full set. So the beauty is, in your context, you purchase only what you feel is valuable to you. So that's a really brief look at some of the printed materials. Please take the packs away when you have time. Have a really good look through them and share them with your churches. But next we'll take a look at the video resources that we've produced. And there are two different sets of these. The first set of videos offers an overview and introduction to Life Events ministry. And these are primarily for practitioners, ministers and others already involved in Life Events ministry in some form or another. There are 12 of these videos altogether, 6 in Welsh and 6 in English. And these videos are short. They each last just around 5 minutes each and can be accessed via the Life Events section of the St. Padon's website. And they focus on some of the key issues which Dr. Miller has already outlined in her research. For an example, there's a video on the importance of creating warm contacts, another on finding that right balance between warmth and processing, welcoming people but still needing to get the information that we need. And I wish we had time to play an excerpt today, but I would encourage you again to have a look when you get a chance. They are excellent quality, and a copy of the transcript for each video is available in both English and Welsh alongside each of those on the website. Now, the second set of videos are, as I speak, still in the process of being produced, but will be available to coincide with that wider rollout of Life Events this coming autumn. And these are aimed not necessarily at practitioners, but the folk in the pews, some of whom may have very little insight as to the Life Events ministry of the church. Let's be honest, for many folk, weddings, funerals, christenings, they're just names and dates on a church newsletter. They don't really understand the ministry that goes into these things. But these particular videos will feature Dr. Miller speaking with and taking questions from a live audience, a mix of people drawn from a variety of different churches. Now, some people may already have some involvement in your churches around wedding or perhaps christening preparation, but there will be many others in our churches who, as I say, know very little about what Life Events ministry entails and the opportunities that exist in our churches around them. Now, again, these videos will also be housed on the St. Padon's website, and links to these will be sent out via comms people in the diocese to every single church in the church in Wales to coincide with that autumn launch. We want people in our congregations to understand, as I say, the opportunities that exist around these. And so to our third and final block of resources, which is online help and support. We pulled together over 120 pages of advice and information. And these include some really great innovative ideas from different people and others sharing examples of good practice. And again, all of these you can find via the Life Event section of the St. Padon's website. And our hope is that this section will grow, it'll expand as more and more churches share their own ideas and their own good practice. Not every idea will work in every context, but some will. There's also some great articles that we've included there which we think are worth a read. So again, when you have chance, please take a look and do help us to expand this going forward. More and more, we want this to reflect what's going on, the innovation going on in our own churches, in our own context here in Wales. Webinars we've run over lockdown at St. Padon's have amazed us with just how creative and imaginative some people can be in reaching out to those who know very little about the good news of Jesus Christ and the help and support that the church offers day in and day out. So I'm really hoping that that online content we've collated can be expanded as we continue to roll this out. Now, I've mentioned the St. Padon's website a fair bit, but of course there's a whole section of Life Events already up and running on the Church in Wales main website. But there are key differences between the two. Whilst the St. Padon's site is really there as a resource to the church and its members, the Church in Wales website has a different role with potentially far greater reach. It's a window for the unchurched onto who we are and what we stand for. So the initial work we're doing here at present is to ensure that the language and the tone of the life events material that's being produced is consonant between both websites, and also that the life event sections of each can be easily navigated, easily cross-referenced, so that people can find what they need easily and quickly. So there's been a lot going on over the last 18 months, and I'm very conscious of the speed with which I've zipped through all of this. But I do hope that it's, if nothing else, at least given you a flavour of what we've been working on these past months and what we've produced at the end of it. Inside your packs, I've included a summary sheet of all that I've included, along with the addresses of the various websites that I've mentioned, including, of course, that church print hub where the materials are now available to order. As both Bishop Cherry and Sandra have already said, today marks the beginning, really, of this autumn launch of the Life Events Initiative. Dr. Miller will, in a couple of weeks, be one of our key speakers at the upcoming LLM and Readers National Conference in Wrexham. And then she'll be joining me in November as we go on tour around Wales. The Life Events rolls out at a pace, and each of our 6 dioceses in Wales will be hosting their own event. We begin in St Asaph on November the 2nd and conclude with Bangor on November the 18th. So our sincere hope, to conclude, is that churches right across Wales will very much welcome all of the resources that have been produced as a valuable addition to their existing life events ministry. And that those ideas, those examples of good practice and the additional support that we've rolled out will help inspire our churches to try new things, try innovative things, to build on the great work that already takes place. And whilst the rollout of these resources marks the end of this particular phase of work, it really is imperative on all of us to see these life events ministries for what they are. Precious, God-given opportunities to share the good news of Jesus Christ and to continue to invest in them and in those who undertake them. 56,000 direct and meaningful conversations every year as a result of life events. 860,000 people who will come to seek support, help, celebration with us in the coming year. Many, many of them in that age group of people that we so often struggle to bring to church on a regular Sunday. That's the scope of the opportunity that exists around life events. That's the reason why it has to be at the very heart of our mission and ministry going forward. If you have any questions or queries about anything that we've covered today, then Dr. Miller and I will be around over coffee. But in the meantime, diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Chris, Bishop Cherry and Sandra, thank you so much for the energy and time that you've brought to this. It is much appreciated, and we look forward to those roadshows in the autumn. We're now going to break for coffee. Can I suggest we come back at 11:20, and please do come back promptly. Thank you.